Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today's topic for discussion is interview questions for healthcare professionals. Majorly it would encompass pharmacist professional more certainly, and what are the tips, do's and don'ts for actually getting your dream job. So we have been dividing this video into four sections: hospital, clinical, industrial and certain miscellaneous questions, and one part is consisting of casual normal tips and tricks. So firstly, normal tips that are required. What are the do's? Try to carry one item only. Do not try to carry a separate lunch tiffin or a separate. See to it that you carry one briefcase or one professional formal bag that would be a little more organized. See to it that you have a good grooming technique, your shirt, your pants, if it's a tie or a blazer, and shoes. It should be all formal or a little semi-formal. Avoid using casuals because first impression would be everlasting. So see to it that you actually have a good grooming. Then this is very important. Sit slightly angled. The sitting position and your posture is very important because the interviewer will actually evaluate you not just on the basis of grooming and your knowledge, but your body language as well. So it should be a little subtle, a decent enough, and professional. Be poised, always be calm and confident enough. Do not be nervous or do not try to stammer in between. Just think what you are. Be honest, do not lie. That is the major key. What are the don'ts? Do not over smile or show nervousness on your face. Do not purse your lips, that is bite your lips. Contract or expand. Do not use much of hand actions, your arms, because that would look too amicable. That wouldn't look that professional. Avoid touching your hair, touching your face, or itching or anything, any action that is inappropriate. And then if whichever company, no, irrespective it's pharmacy, engineering or any background, agriculture, see to it that you go through the company's vision, mission, the services, the products that are being sold. So suppose if I am interested in Sandoz, or I'm that is a pharmaceutical company, so I should know about the vision of Sandoz, that is Novartis. I should know the mission, the products, the tablets, capsules, parenterals, what are the different products, the services offered. So that is what you call going through the entire like a profile of the company. L&T, Larsen and Turbo. So I will know about the branches or what are the services actually that are given by this company. So that is majorly. Next is grooming skills, as I already mentioned about the same. um, classify yourself whether you're a product oriented person or a process oriented person. मतलब there are actually two types of people. एक जो सिर्फ काम करते हैं and then they just find out jugards and certain techniques to do some work quickly, and other is proper organized work who follow all the steps, see to it that there are no errors or faults, and the proper process is being followed, cascade is being followed. And other people, they just do some jugaad, or they just find out some way, shortcuts to actually do that job. So Bill Gates also once had said that if you find shortcuts, it's not wrong because it's a actual part to success. So if you're finding shortcuts, that great. So classify whether you're a product oriented or a process oriented person. Then go through the job profile or the description that you're opting for, like senior manager, manager, or an associate, or an employee as a therapeutic assistant, whatever the job profile is. Just go through it and the description. What is the actual job of that person? What will you actually, how will you be of utilization to the company? How is your how is your actually gestures? How are your personality useful for that company? Talk about the skills that are associated with that profile. Like suppose if it's an HR, human resources or something. So confidence, communication skills, those are extremely essential parameters. So that is very, very essential to be spoken about. And at the end, if they ask you what questions you have from your side, so majorly this question is being asked at the end to see the caliber of the candidate. They will ask you, what do you have any questions from your side? They will directly ask you this, do you have any questions? So avoid saying no, because if you say no, it will show a little of disinterest, or it will be, you will be categorized in a very ordinary people. So it's better that you opt for something, you ask about company's scope, company's further goals, objectives, that would create a better impression, or company's certain policies, medical policies, etc. So it would create a better impression. They will actually think that you are interested in that job, you are interested in the company, that is why you are asking. But over asking is again fatal, so avoid asking any irrelevant questions. Stick to the company and stick to the professionalism. And the last question that mostly it is being asked by the interviewer: why do you think we will hire you? Like, what are the qualities inside you that we should hire you? How can you help us? So think, say something that you are, pick up any adjective that suits you. Like, your thinking is out of box, you are a good performer, you are ready to learn, you can do well under pressure. Those are few of the qualities that you can actually opt for. What are the types of questions that will be covered? Clinical, hospital, research, industrial, and miscellaneous. So there are certain do's and don'ts. Always arrive early. Avoid procrastination and avoid getting late. See to it that you reach, suppose if the interview is at 9:30, try to reach by 9:15. Sit there, calm yourself, because if you reach late, it will create a bad impression, of course. And secondly, you might get a little panic and the situation might turn to be paranoid. Research about the company, of course, know about the company. Like, do not blindly just go for an interview. If I'm going for an interview in Apollo Pharmacy, I must know what is Apollo, I must know the company. If I'm going in Cipla, I must know about Cipla. Always try to sell yourself. So mostly they will ask you that, show me, sell this pen to me or something. You would have seen that many people ask you to see how much is your skills, how much is your selling skills. So always emphasize upon your skills, your achievements, if any, your accomplishments. That would create a better impact. Show some enthusiasm. Of course, a positive energy and ambience is what that will create the aura around. So if you have a good rapport building skills, if you are having some good enthusiasm within you, that would be a great, it would be an icing on the cake. Try to have a mock interview, like, just before, in your examinations, before the semester final exams, there are small unit tests, there are small weekly tests. Why are those? To prepare you, so that you are a little more confident enough. So try to give mock interview online. There are so many apps available for the same. Ask the right questions. Of course, if they ask you what are the remunerations, what are the salary expectations, do not just say anything that 12 lakhs per year or 5 lakhs per year. Stick to something. If you are a fresher, tell that, as I'm a fresher, if I would get to learn more, I'm ready to work. Something like that. Frame your sentence and think something that is logical. Do not over ask or do not under ask. That both of them could be fatal. Send the tailor thank you emails. Like, if there are any customized work or something, you could just thank them. And see to it that you take a follow-up. If there are no mails or anything from the company, just ask them where you stand, so that you'll come to know about your. And also, before going to the interview, you can take follow-ups of the mock interviews. See what are the pros and cons and work upon your strengths and weaknesses, certainly, and you can do excel well and do well. Avoid being negative. Avoid embellishing the details. Like, do not lie, do not tell something that is not existing. See to it that your phone is on silent. Of course, do not use phones and the phone should be on silent. Do not overdress, like too much of jewelry, too much of perfume, too much of makeup. It would create a bad impression. You are going for an interview, you're not going for any fashion ramp walk or something, so that would create a negative impact. Talk about compensation. Save, do not talk, avoid using these terms, compensations or medical help or something like that. Do not offer too many personal details. They haven't asked for your Aadhaar card. Do not overtell about anything that is not necessary. Just stick to what is required and how much is essential. Do not clarify or justify everything. Only answer those things that are being asked to you. Do not again I'm saying, only focus upon whatever is the major point and the bullet key points. So do not overthink or do not oversay something that is not essential. So firstly, what are the questions that could be asked in an industrial pharmacy? So there are different, again, we can say, categories in industrial pharmacy. One is QA, QC, formulation and development, It depends upon you which department. If you are a good formulator, if you can make good tablets, capsules, emulsions, suspensions, solutions, syrups, elixir link tests, etc. So you can go for F&D. If you're good in documentation, if you're good in testing, if you're good in legislature, QA QC could be a department for your genre. What could they ask? They could ask some basic questions about tablets, capsules, either about their excipients or their equipments or their quality control tests like hardness, dissolution, bloom strength, iron content, viscosity, excipients like binders. They could ask you for an example, glidant. They could tell you if lactose is not available, which diluent you can use, or if they can give you a case study. How? Suppose if isoniazid, it is an anti-tuberculosis drug. You never use lactose with the amine containing drug. That is, isoniazid is amine containing. Even there's pyrazinamide. There are a lot many amine containing drugs. Consider isoniazid. So if you use lactose with isoniazid, there's a Maillard reaction. They could ask you these case study based questions. Sweeteners. So sweeteners is basically carcinogenic. It can cause cancer. That is why they are nowadays natural sweeteners are preferred, not those saccharin, sucralose, etc. Stevia is a good natural sweetener. So basically, honey is a natural sweetener. You got licorice, that is a mulethi jethi mud. That is also it is also a demulcent. You can use it for your bad throat. So these are few basics that could be asked about the tablets and capsules. They could ask you about the pre-formulation studies, like what are the different parameters, partition coefficient, solubility, nature, whether it's crystalline, amorphous. They could ask you about the GMP, that is good manufacturing practices. These are basically protocols or certain guidelines and instructions. Suppose if you enter, how are you gonna enter? What are you gonna wear? How are you going to handle small SOPs, that is standard operating procedures. They just want to know you how intricate you can go. So these could be the questions. What is the difference between qualification, calibration and validation? This could be the question in QA QC department. So basically there's a qualification is a part of validation. It is so there is different types of validation: prospective, retrospective, revalidation, concurrent validation. Qualification is of different types: installation, design, performance, operational. So basically, firstly, there is design qualification. So first, suppose if you have an equipment, suppose if I'm manufacturing tablets of paracetamol. So I should know that how my tableting machine is single punch. What will be the design? That is first. Then is the installation. If I'm going to install this design car, is it going to make space? Is it properly working or installed? Next comes the operational qualification. Is it operating well within the ranges? And the last is performance. Suppose if it has given guarantee of 2 years, is it working within the extremes, within the bracketed demarcations or so? So that is performance qualification. So you have to be very fair and very clear with your basics, because those could be very intricate in your interview. And the next question they can ask you, if you could change one thing about the pharmaceutical industry, what would it be and why? This is the most common question. Like, they want suggestions and feedbacks from you so that they can improve. So they want to see how much you can think and in what direction you can think. So it's better that you be a little more subtle in these answering these kind of questions. Next question that they could ask is equipment handling and knowledge. Like they want to know whether you want to know to use HPLC, which is high pressure liquid chromatography, HPTLC, high performance thin layer chromatography, or some spectrometry instruments like the UV visible. Are you acquainted with these equipments? Have you used them before? Or something hydrometer, moisture content determination, Carl Fisher type. They can ask you anything from the basics. And the last one is define the process flow of sterile lyophilized manufacturing. So lyophilized powder, or there are certain powder for reconstitution. They are freeze dried powders. So there are so many vaccines, there are so many powders that are being lyophilized for their stability purpose. So even parenterals, they can ask you about injections. What area will you prepare? Aseptic area class 100. You must know this basics about injectables as well. So if you are injecting something directly into the bloodstream, so it should be obviously sterile. It cannot be non-sterile. So like they can ask you about WFI, that is water for injection or so. So these could be the common questions for industrial pharmacy. So you have to, of course, prepare for common interview questions. Bring all the interview materials like your resume, your CV, and I have made a video for the resume and CV as well, how to make it, how to design it. I would share the link for the same in the description box. And research about the company, of course, that is very, very important. The next is the hospital pharmacy. So a hospital pharmacy, there are so many renowned hospitals. So you can work in different departments, and like IPD and OPD, outpatient and inpatient. Inpatient is basically those patients who are actually occupying a bed. Matlab they have been actually admitted in the hospital. Outpatient is something they are visiting any doctor, XYZ doctor, who's a part of that hospital, but they are not staying there overnight. They're just coming for the treatment or follow-up purpose. That is outpatient. So they could ask you about the OTC and narcotics. Narcotics is basically those drugs that are said to be drug dependency or drug abuse. So Narcotics Bureau, there's a NDPS, Narcotics, Drugs and Psychotropic Substance Act 1985. So you need to know that there's a need of triplicate prescription. If there's no triplicate prescription, even if it's refilling, there has to be proper prescription, proper dates. You will not dispense. They will ask you. There are so many narcotics like fentanyl, codeine. That is why codeine is now banned. Before it was used in cough syrups. That is why people used to sleep so much, and without having cough, people used to misuse those cough syrups and have it just because it was sweet in taste, and it was giving them euphoria. That's called euphoria. So this is codeine. So that is why codeine is now banned. There are so many: hydrocodone, meperidine, morphine. Morphine is an analgesic. It's an opioid analgesic. So these all are very, very carefully to be dispensed. Then they'll ask you about the OTC products, over the counter. That means you do not need any prescription like the paracetamol tablets. You do not need a prescription. You can directly go and ask. The antacids preparation, Gelucil, Digene. There are so many different antacids that you could just go and ask for. Laxatives, Isabgol. You do not need any prescription for the same. You can just go and ask. Liquid paraffin. There are so many nasal decongestant like oxymetazoline, Otrivin and all. So you don't need antibiotics. Certain antibiotics that are non-restricted, they are being OTC. Certain antifungal agents, certain dusting powders, they do not need prescriptions. So you can directly, like, there are so many antifungal agents, ketoconazole, clotrimazole and all. So that is what they want to know whether you are acquainted with these terms or no. Next is drug interaction. As a hospital pharmacist, you should be well versed with the drug interactions. Like if if the patient is on warfarin, you cannot give him aspirin. Otherwise, the bleeding will be very prolonged. They both are anticoagulants, so hemorrhage can occur. Also, one very interesting case study with Chyawanprash, that is a natural formulation. You cannot give phenytoin. That is an anti-epileptic drug. Epilepsy is basically fits, because it will actually prolong the fits, or it's not good. So that is what you should be versed with the drug interactions. Antibiotics, basic knowledge of the antibiotics, the rational use of antibiotics like Ezi-500, azithromycin, Claribid, clarithromycin. There are so many antibiotics that you need to be used. The dose: 500 mg, 150 mg, 250 mg, amoxicillin and clavulanic acid, amoxiclave. There are so many different doses, 3 doses of amoxiclave. So that is important. Next is the OPD and IPD information. Of course, you should be known to the hospital formulary and all. The next question that they can ask is, what is expiry date and what is shelf life? So shelf life is basically when the 10% of drug is being degraded and the 90% is persisting. The half life is when 50% is being degraded. So that is what is difference between shelf life and the half life. So they can ask you about the batch number. You should be known, like you cannot just pick up any batch number. Suppose if you have two formulations, um, this other two suspensions, suppose we can say one has a batch number of 4003, one has 4004. So one has an expiry date in August, one has an expiry date in November, and suppose you are in the month of July. So you will obviously not go for the one that is in August, because it will be very difficult for you to come. It will get expired. So you will obviously go for something that has a prolonged expiry date. So that is why batch number is very, very important. Next is, are you aware about LASA? LASA is sound alike, look alike medicine. So there are certain medications that are drugs that are called as sound alike, look alike, like digoxin, digitoxin. There are certain companies like Advicor, Advair. There are certain drugs like like methotrexate and folic acid. They are two opposite. Folic acid increases the vitamin B9. Methotrexate is an antagonist of vitamin B9. Zantac, Xanax, heparin, Hespen, folinic acid, folic acid, chlorpropamide, chlorpromazine. These are all example of the LASA drugs, sound alike, look alike medications. So you should be a little more vigilant when it comes to these LASA medications. Also, one is very important, dexamethasone and dextromethorphan. Dextromethorphan is something that is antitussive for your cough, ambroxol and dextromethorphan. But again, dexamethasone is a steroid. So if the medication prescription has dexamethasone and if you dispense them dextromethorphan, obviously it's going to be a big hazard. So you should be well versed with these terms. And the last question, what would you do if a customer asked you about an over-the-counter medication that you have never heard of? They can ask you these kind of questions like that are case study based, or that are situational based. They can put you in a situation and ask you, okay, just like when we play truth and dare, we say that suppose if you are in a ship, who will you save, X or Y? Similarly, they will ask you a case study based question or a situation based questions. So you should be prepared and you should have good presence of mind for a better answer. The next is the clinical pharmacy. So clinical pharmacy basically deals with certain terminologies like therapeutic drug monitoring, drug selection, drug evaluation, dosage optimization. So suppose if there's a person XYZ who's suffering from epilepsy or something, so tampering of dose is very, very important. There are certain medications like propranolol, certain steroids that needs their dose is tapered. That means suppose if you have given them 200 mg of XYZ drug. So you will not directly tell them that हाँ एक हफ्ता ले लो and then you can stop. That is extremely wrong. You will tell them that एक हफ्ता 200 mg, then for the next 3 days 100 mg, for the next 1 day 50 mg, and then you can stop. This is what you call tapering of dose, reduction in the dose, adjustment in the dose. Because once you there might be withdrawal symptoms, just like a person who is alcoholic or who consumes a lot of cigarettes, so he is addicted. If you tell him in 1 day to stop, he will not stop any. He will ground, he will sit on the floor, he will make noise, he will do so many things that are undesirable. So that is what is addiction. So this might create an impact. So that is what is the role of a clinical pharmacist, to see that the dosage optimization, the regime, whether if it's 3 times a day, it is given 3 times a day. Whether is it empty stomach, like mostly the drugs for acidity like omeprazole, pantoprazole, pan D, pan 40, they are given 1 hour or 30 minutes before the lunch. Why so? Because the hydrogen potassium ATPase pump needs to be blocked and the secretions need to be reduced, and then only if you consume food it will be bad. Certain drugs like antiviral like indinavir and all, they are to be given with fatty foods. There are so many different terminologies that are associated. So you, as a clinical pharmacist, you should be very, very vigilant. So pharmacovigilance play a vital role. Then they will ask you what are the most common types of drugs prescribed, because there is a certain patterns that these many drugs like rivastigmine, or suppose in diabetes metformin, in hypertension atenolol, propranolol and all. So there are certain medications that are quite repetitive, so they might ask you about the same. Contraindications, they will ask you whether if a female is pregnant, will you give them suppose if the female is pregnant, will you give them phenytoin, will you give them thalidomide? So obviously no. If you give them thalidomide, the fetus born will be having deformities, his legs, his hands will be all deformed, because thalidomide is very, very teratogenic. Phenytoin, if you give him phenytoin, that there might could be fetal hydantoin syndrome. There are so many different contraindications. Then they will ask you about Schedule G and Schedule H. These are those medications that are to be given under medical supervision only, and H is for only under prescription. Without a prescription, you will not give them, and without medical supervision. These are highly potent drugs. So that is why Schedule G and Schedule H drugs are very, very important, and they are majorly hormonal preparations also. They include bleomycin, Majorly anti-cancer drugs, hydroxyurea, insulin, chlorambucil, busulfan, cyclophosphamide. They are all undergoing the classification of Schedule G and Schedule H. Then they might ask you what is the process of monitoring a patient's response. So suppose if a patient is on dialysis, hemodialysis or peritoneal dialysis. So you have to check the blood levels in the body. That is very essential. If there are two comorbid condition, that is a person is having hypertension and diabetes both, so at that time patient's therapeutic drug, you might have heard that doctor is telling that have this medication for 13 days and then come for follow up after 13 days, show it to me, just consult me. Why so? Because therapeutic drug monitoring is a very important field to know whether the dose is working, to know whether the proper regime is being followed, so that there is patient compliance and medication adherence. Then they might ask you, do you have any experience working with any insurance company? So majorly ICICI and other insurance companies for mediclaim purpose, they're having one doctor and one pharmacist, both. So they ask you about basically the blood pressure, the normal blood glucose level, the normal cholesterol level, etc. So that is what they could be encompassed in these type of questions. And the last is, if we want to improve our patient compliance rate, what would be the strategies? They might want you to give them some ideas, like for medication adherence, there are pill counts. You check the count of the pill. There is checking of the refilling rate. Like suppose if a person was supposed to have 3 medications once a day and the tablet packaging was of 10 tablets, so he should come on the 4th day because his tablets ka course is over. That is how he will come to know about the medication adherence. Then there are silicon based caps. This is a novel technology. These are in majorly aerosols or certain preparations. So the number of times you open the cap, it will be detected and they will come to know that this person has had these medications in a day thrice, in a day twice. But of course it could be misused, like if you, even if you open it like that without having the medication, it will still show the count. So there are certain gaps, there are certain analysis that you can bridge, that you can find a solution to. The next up we have is the research area. So they might ask you something that's more of a case study purpose than situational based. Like they can ask you about a drug solubility. So at home, if I give you salt and I tell you to dissolve in water, you will immediately dissolve. If I give you sugar and I tell you to dissolve in water, you will immediately dissolve. But suppose if one place you have a glass rod and you're stirring the sugar in the water, and in the other you have a stove on the gas, you have heating the water and then you are stirring the sugar. Obviously the one in which heat is provided, sugar will dissolve quickly. Why so? Because the particle size, there are so many different temperature factors, endothermic reactions taking place. So they might ask you solubility based, what are the different methods, like nano reduction, nano sizing, micronization, drug salt formation, nano suspension, surfactant, complexation, cyclodextrin, hp beta c, etc. Then they might ask you about chromatography. What is normal phase chromatography? What is reverse phase chromatography? How are the what is the solvents used? What are the different stationary phases used? They will ask you about the assay method, assay procedure, quantitative methods. So basically the questions can revolve around characterization and validation of any formulation, whether it be buccal film, oral tablets, parenterals, capsules, aerosols, suppositories, pessaries, anything. It will still, the formulation purpose will be still oriented towards your more of your characterization and validation purpose. Then they might ask you, do you have any work experience with animals? So in R&D, you majorly work for preclinical trials and all with animals like rabbit, mice. So they will ask you, are you aware with the CPC-SCA guidelines, that is Committee for the Purpose of Control and Supervision of Experiment on Animals. They might ask you about the different handling techniques, the euthanasia. Euthanasia is basically mercy killing. Matlab you don't, you sacrifice an animal but mercifully. You do not like strict, there is two terms, halal and not halal. So similarly, you can relate these euthanasia with those terms, halal and not halal. One is with machine and one is with without the machine, without giving them a lot of pain and all. So that is what is the difference with the euthanasia animals. What are your strengths? They might ask you about the SWOT analysis: strength, weakness, opportunity, and threats. So you should know what are your strengths. You should know what are your weaknesses. Like if I'm a good speaker, I'm having a good control in my English vocabulary. So that could be my, if I have a good lingo, so that could be my strengths. If there are any weakness, like I am a little short tempered, I get angry very soon. So those could be my weaknesses, or I'm less patient, something like that. Then what are the three adjectives that, this is a very common question asked, what are the three adjectives that describe you? So you have to basically इस पे आपको तारीफ करनी है, you have to represent yourself in such a way that they get impressed by you. Tell that you are very persevered, you are very focused, you have good leadership qualities, you have good coordination skills, etc. Those could add on to your interview. Next is, where do you see yourself and the company in the next 5 years? So they might ask you that what, suppose if you're joining Sandoz. So where do you see in the next 5 years? As a, suppose now if you have joined as an assistant manager, do you see yourself as a manager, or somewhere close to the vice president also, as normal your job profile, or how where do you see the company's profits, company sales, etc. Then, of course, they might ask you about the remunerations and salary expectations that we have previously discussed. And the last slide is of miscellaneous purpose. So basically, you can go on these websites. I have just taken this image from SlideShare. So these are free ebooks, PDFs, 13 types of questions, the checklist, the cover letter, resume. All of these sites are very useful. So once just visit them and try to see if they are of any use. And lastly, these are some miscellaneous points that I wanted to highlight. So suppose if you are industrial pharmacy and you are interested in RA, regulatory affairs. So they might ask you what is the role of regulatory affairs. So you should know that to keep tracks on the changes, the legislations, the R&D QC department changes, SUPAC guidelines, that is scale up and post approval changes and all. Then if you're coming in the hospital, so you should be aware about the extemporaneous preparations, the bulk fluid preparations, like compounding and all, drug information services, patient screening, pharmaceutical management, inventory control. You should very good in statistics. Like suppose there is Pizina, that is pyrazinamide. So the dose is given for around 1 month, and every day you need to have 3 tablets, and if one packaging consists of 10 tablets, so you should be able to quickly calculate ke हाँ भैया इसको. So you should properly fill the prescription, dispense the prescription adequate amount. So he might require 3 steps for an entire month. So in this way you can calculate like this. So in this way you will have a statistical approach. So that is again a skill that is required. Promote telepharmacy, telehealth, pharmaceutical care, etc. And then they might ask you the goals of clinical pharmacy, clinical review, drug monitoring, patient optimization, research purpose, indications and all. So that's all for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Kindly do like, share and subscribe, and let me know in the comment section if any of the doubts persist. Thank you so much everyone.